Hello, you're on the Reddit Reveals channel. She reached for my right hand. But here's the thing, I always held her left. Every time. For 9 years. She knew that. She knew that. So why did she reach for my right hand? It happened outside the funeral home. Windless day. Her cousin Miles had died in a motorcycle accident, and she was wearing that black wrap dress she usually kept in a dry cleaning bag, reserved for serious events. We hadn't spoken much that morning. Just drove in silence. No music. No hand on my thigh like she used to. Just cold air and coffee breath. We stepped out of the car. She looked at me. Not through me. Not past me. At me. And then, she reached out for my right hand. I flinched. It felt wrong. Like shaking your sibling's hand with a wedding vow. It was off. So I said quietly, "What are you doing?" She laughed. A fake, fluttery one. "Just hold my hand, Gordon." I paused. "You always take my left." Her smile faltered. Just for half a second. Then she looked over my shoulder and said, "Let's go. People are watching." People were watching. But who? That's when I turned around and saw him. Tall. Blue suit. No tie. Mid-30s. Sunglasses on even though we were in the shade. He wasn't looking at the crowd. He was looking at us. Or maybe just at her. He nodded. She didn't nod back. She squeezed my right hand like we were teenagers again, but her palm was dry, her nails digging in, and I realized in that moment. She was performing. Not for me. Not for the family. For him. The rest of the funeral is a blur. Hymns, plastic chairs, sad sandwiches. I caught them glancing at each other 4 more times. Once when I passed her a napkin. Once when she hugged her aunt. Twice when she thought I wasn't looking. But I was. I always do. I'm a watcher, not a talker. Never been confrontational. I hold things in. I write things down in my notes app and delete them before bed. I cry in the garage with the car radio on. I iron my jeans. I remember the names of her co-workers she says don't matter. After the funeral, she hugged him. Too long. Too familiar. She told me it was Miles' old college roommate. I said nothing. Just nodded and drove her home. And then that night, while she slept, I checked her purse for gum. Just gum. And found a folded sheet of paper. Hotel letterhead. Room number circled in pen. The date was yesterday. We were together yesterday. But apparently, so were they. I didn't go to the hotel that night. I told myself I'd sleep on it. Be rational. Be smart. Not jump to conclusions over a scrap of paper in her purse. But sleeping on it turned into lying on my back in the dark for 6 hours, blinking at the ceiling fan as it creaked just slightly off rhythm, like it was mocking me. She was beside me the whole time, breathing slow, deep, peaceful, like her conscience was clean, like mine should be the one spinning. By morning, I was already sitting in my car outside the Lindenwood Inn. It was 6:47 a.m. The lot was mostly empty. 2 pickups, 1 van with tinted windows, and 1 black BMW I didn't recognize. The air was cold enough to fog the glass. I waited until 7:10. Then I got out. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know if I wanted to confront her, or him, or just see something. Anything that could snap this paranoid bubble in my chest. The lobby was empty. A bell on the counter. Gold wallpaper. The kind of place meant to feel luxurious, but just ends up feeling dated. I told the clerk I was here to meet someone in room 409. He asked if they were expecting me. I smiled and said, definitely not. He didn't stop me. The elevator creaked all the way up. Every floor felt like it was asking me one last time, "Are you sure you want to do this?" But I was past sure. I was already in the story. I just hadn't read the ending yet. 4th floor. Left side. Room 409. I stood outside the door for what felt like hours, heart pounding like I'd sprinted there. I didn't knock. I didn't have to. The door was slightly ajar. The first thing I noticed was the perfume. Hers. Jasmine and something woody. Expensive, old-world stuff she only wore on special occasions. Like our anniversary. Or, apparently, hotel meetups. Then came the sound. A man's voice. Not moaning. Not romantic. Just talking. Calm. Too calm. I leaned closer. He's going to find out, you know? People like him always do, eventually. Her voice, soft but sharp. That's none of your business. His reply. You made it my business when you let this go on for 6 months. 6 months. I stumbled back like I'd been punched in the ribs. My heel hit the housekeeping cart I hadn't seen behind me. The metal clattered against the wall. Silence inside the room. Then, fast footsteps. The door swung wide open. It wasn't her. It was him. The guy from the funeral, blue suit now replaced by a plain white shirt, sleeves rolled up, eyes tired like he hadn't slept either. He looked at me for maybe half a second. Not surprised. Not scared. Just annoyed. "You must be Gordon," he said flatly. "Well, that's awkward." I pushed past him. Clarabelle was inside, standing near the window, wearing my hoodie. The one she said she couldn't find last week. She didn't scream. Didn't cry. Didn't even act caught. She just crossed her arms and said, "You shouldn't be here." I looked at her. Looked around the room. One bed, messy. 2 coffee cups. Her boots on the floor next to his shoes. "Then tell me what I should be," I said. Because clearly, husband isn't the answer anymore. She opened her mouth like she had a prepared speech, then closed it, turned to the window. The man, I still didn't know his name, picked up his phone from the table and said, almost to himself, "You should have told him last month. I warned you." She didn't reply, just kept staring out at the snow. That was the moment I knew. Not that she cheated, that part was already a fact, but that she wasn't sorry. That whatever we used to have had been replaced by a quiet, ruthless calculation. Like I was the final item on her to-do list before starting a new life. I walked out. No yelling. No threats. Just numb, heavy silence. But as I reached the elevator, I heard something I wasn't meant to hear. The man, inside the room, lowering his voice. "He's not going to let this go quietly. You know that, right?" To which she replied, "Then I'll give him a reason to stay quiet." I didn't sleep for the next 3 days. I pretended I did. I lay down, turned off the lights, even snored on purpose so she wouldn't get suspicious. But inside, I was wide awake, watching her, studying her breathing patterns, how she opened drawers more carefully now, how she didn't leave her phone unattended even once. It was like she already knew I had seen everything, and yet, she never brought it up. Not the hotel, not the man, not even the look I gave her when she came home that night and acted like she'd just been running errands. She didn't know I heard her say those words. "Then I'll give him a reason to stay quiet." And I wasn't sure what that meant. Not yet. On the 3rd day, she left the house around 10 a.m., said she was going to help her sister move a couch. Her sister lives in Arizona. We live in New York. She said it casually, like I wouldn't notice. Like she was testing me, checking to see if I'd call her bluff or just nod like I always used to. I nodded. And as soon as the door shut, I went into full archaeologist mode. Now let me be clear, I've never snooped before. Not once in over a decade. I was the guy who respected privacy, who turned away when she typed in her phone passcode. But something had snapped. Not just because she was unfaithful, but because she wasn't scared of being caught anymore. That's what terrified me. Like she knew something I didn't. Like she was holding an ace card I couldn't see. I didn't go for her phone. I went for the old places. The dusty corners. The forgotten boxes under the bed. Her art supply cabinet. The hollow space behind the dryer vent she once used to hide birthday presents for me. And that's where I found it. A plain white envelope. No name. No stamp. Sealed. It was tucked behind a half-empty bottle of wood varnish and a broken picture frame. I stared at it for a long time. It didn't feel like just a letter. It was thick. Heavy. I felt it in my palm. Paper and something harder. A flash drive, maybe? I broke the seal. Inside were 3 things. A folded sheet of paper, typed. A photo. And a key. The letter wasn't addressed to anyone. Just a list, 7 names. First names only. Some I recognized vaguely. Co-workers she mentioned over the years, a few friends from her volunteer group. The 6th name was underlined. The 7th was mine. Yes, my name. Typed cleanly. Bolded. As if it were the punchline. The photo was grainy. A candid shot taken from far away. 2 people sitting in a diner booth. One of them was definitely me. The other was not Clarabelle. It was a woman I barely remembered, a former co-worker I'd had lunch with last year after a training seminar. The angle of the photo made it look intimate, like something it wasn't. I suddenly realized this wasn't a record of her betrayal. It was insurance. On me. I looked at the key again, small, silver, labeled Box 117B. A storage unit, maybe? A P.O. box? My mind spiraled in a dozen directions. She wasn't just cheating. She was preparing a narrative. A way out. A story where I'd be the guilty one. The unstable one. The emotionally manipulative husband who'd pushed her into someone else's arms. And it was working. She had planted the seed. Said just enough strange things around her friends. hinted at me being off lately, paranoid, not himself. I had laughed it off when she said that at a dinner party 2 weeks ago. Now I understood. She was laying the foundation. She was getting ready to disappear and leave me behind as the villain. I stood in the laundry room, holding the envelope like it was evidence in a murder case. Maybe it was. Maybe something worse than betrayal was happening here. Because as I reread the letter, I noticed something I missed before, a line at the bottom of the page. If he opens this early, follow through with Plan Echo. Plan Echo. I had no idea what it meant. But I was starting to realize that Clarabelle wasn't just unfaithful, she was dangerous. I didn't even know how to begin searching for something like Plan Echo. It sounded like military code, or something you'd find scribbled on a wall in a conspiracy movie. But it was typed. Neatly. With intent. It was meant to mean something, and that something was likely going to change the course of what was left of my life. So I did what anyone does when they're out of options. I Googled it. Of course, nothing came up. Nothing relevant, anyway. A few sci-fi novels. A startup company based in Utah. One random Reddit thread from 10 years ago about Cold War espionage theories. But nothing that connected back to Clarabelle, or me, or the strange file of half-truths she had hidden behind the laundry room vent. That's when I remembered the flash drive. Or more accurately, the hard edge I had felt inside the envelope. I went back, unfolded the lining more carefully this time. And there it was, a small micro SD card, almost invisible, taped behind the flap like it had been deliberately hidden in a place only someone truly nosy would find. And I was officially that someone now. I didn't have a reader for the card. My laptop didn't have a port. So I drove to a cheap tech shop 2 towns over where I knew the guy behind the counter wouldn't ask questions. I told him I needed a reader, didn't say for what, and paid cash. Then I sat in my car, plugged it in, and opened the only file on the card. It was a video, just under 4 minutes long. No title, no date. It opened on Clarabelle, but not like I'd ever seen her. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't posing. She was talking to someone off camera. Her voice was flat, empty, like she was reading a script she didn't believe in but knew had to be said. I don't know when he's going to figure it out, she said. But when he does, I'll trigger Echo. A pause. Then the voice of a man, deep and calm. Are you confident he won't retaliate? Clarabelle looked down. Her hands were folded. She was nervous. I recognized the necklace she was wearing. It was one I gave her 3 years ago for our anniversary. I don't think he has it in him. He's a reactor, not a planner. He spirals inward. That's what we're counting on. We. That word shattered something inside me. She didn't say I'm counting on it. She said we, which meant this wasn't her solo plan. This wasn't some impulsive betrayal born out of emotional emptiness or temptation. This was something orchestrated, engineered. The video ended there. Abruptly. No context. No closing remarks. Just Clarabelle on a grainy camera, calmly laying out my psychological profile like a medical chart. And the worst part was, she was right. I am a reactor. I collapse in silence. I fold instead of fight. I journal instead of scream. I sat there in the car for at least an hour, staring at the frozen black screen. That video wasn't just insurance. It was a diagnosis, a roadmap. And whoever that man was, whoever she was working with, they had studied me like I was a lab rat. They knew I wouldn't burn the house down. They knew I'd isolate, pull back, fall apart neatly and quietly, and let her walk away without resistance. But they missed something. Because I wasn't going to fall apart this time. I was going to invert it. I started with the key, the one labeled box 117B. I spent the next 2 hours driving around trying every combination of that label, storage facilities, post offices, even abandoned self-storage units in old industrial areas. Eventually, I landed at a private lockbox center just off Route 92. No cameras, no front desk, just a code to get in and rows of metal boxes along the wall. I slid the key into box 117B. My hands were shaking. Inside was a burner phone, powered off, and a folded note taped to the screen. If you're reading this, you opened the wrong door. I stood there frozen, the phone heavy in my palm. The wrong door? What did that mean? Was this a trap? A warning? Was she watching me right now? My mind raced. I suddenly felt like the air was too thin in the room. I left immediately, but not before taking the phone with me. When I got back to my car, I popped the back cover off. No SIM card. No SD. Just a blank, untraceable shell. And when I powered it on, nothing happened. Until exactly 3 minutes later, when it vibrated once. A message appeared on the screen from a contact listed only as E. "We warned you, Gordon. You should have stayed asleep." I didn't go home right away. After that message, "You should have stayed asleep," something inside me shifted. Not snapped. That would have been too easy. It was more like a quiet rewiring. A slow burn behind my ribs. Like I was being pulled into a game I didn't agree to play, but somehow had already been losing for years. I sat in my car outside a discount liquor store off the highway and stared at the burner phone sitting on the passenger seat, screen black now, as if it hadn't just punched a hole through my sense of reality. I didn't know what E meant. Was it Clarabelle herself? Someone she worked with? Someone she was working for? I thought about the man from the hotel. His steady, measured tone. Like a guy used to planning contingencies. The more I thought about it, the less I could believe this was just a messy affair. This was something calculated, controlled, and I was the target. But why? What did I ever do that could make her want to ruin me like this? I was loyal. I paid the bills. I never screamed, never cheated, never raised a hand, never forgot an anniversary. I brought her coffee every morning, left the light on when she came home late, let her win arguments just to keep the peace. I bent myself into shapes to make her happy. I turned into someone else, piece by piece, because she never outright asked for it, but somehow expected it. So why did it feel like I was the one being punished? I drove aimlessly for a while, circling streets I hadn't been down in years, until something strange happened. At a stoplight on Argyle Street, my gaze flicked to the sidewalk and locked onto a man standing beneath the awning of a laundromat. Late 40s, military haircut, cigarette dangling from his lips, hands in the pockets of a beige windbreaker. He looked up right as I did, and smiled. Not the kind of smile you give a stranger. The kind of smile that says, "I know you." I blinked. The light turned green. I drove through the intersection and whipped around the block, heart thumping. When I got back to the spot, less than 20 seconds later, the man was gone. Completely. Like he'd never been there. I parked anyway, got out, walked up and down the sidewalk pretending to check my phone while scanning every reflection in the windows. Nothing. No trace. I was just about to give up when I noticed something taped to the side of a public mailbox at the corner. It was a Polaroid photo, clear as day. A photo of me, taken just hours earlier in the storage facility parking lot. I was holding the burner phone, squinting down at the screen. On the back of the photo, written in red marker. "Oh, what's owed, Gordon." That was when it hit me like a hammer to the spine. This wasn't about Clarabelle's betrayal. This wasn't even about the marriage. It was about something I'd done a long time ago. Or maybe something I'd forgotten. I drove straight to my childhood home, now abandoned and scheduled for demolition next spring, because I needed answers no one living could give me. I hadn't been back in over 10 years. The front porch was sagging. The windows boarded up. I had to crawl in through the basement. Dust clung to my lungs. The smell of mildew and rotten would nearly knock me over. I went to the upstairs closet. The one that used to be locked. The one my father told me never to open, even though I tried once when I was 16 and got slapped so hard I saw stars. The lock was gone now. Just rust and splinters. Inside the closet was a shoebox labeled in faded pen, GM. Private. My initials. I opened it. Inside were letters. Receipts. A black spiral notebook full of scribbled names and amounts. And one page near the end with my name, Gordon Maxley. And the words settled, crossed out with such aggression it tore through the page. Underneath, a single line. "Nothing ends unpaid." I sank to the floor. Because now I remembered. The man from years ago. The loan I took out in secret to keep Clarabelle's business from collapsing. The handshake deal with no paperwork. The envelope full of cash. The condition I forgot, or maybe chose to forget, that if I couldn't repay by the end of the 6th year, the debt would be redirected. Clarabelle never knew about that loan. But they did. Now I was starting to see. The betrayal wasn't romantic. It was transactional. They were collecting. And I was the collateral. The first time I heard the name Dry Hollow, I was 13. It was during one of my father's whiskey-fueled lectures about men who don't pay what they owe. He always repeated the same line whenever the lights flickered during a storm. "Some debts come with longer shadows than others, son." At the time, I thought he was just being dramatic, another relic from his life before me, one he never talked about in detail. He'd mumble things about past favors, unfinished jobs, men who disappeared quietly, and places you didn't mention out loud unless you wanted a knock at your door. He'd always end the rant with one warning. If you ever hear someone say they're out of Dry Hollow, walk away. I didn't walk away, because after I left my childhood home, after finding the ledger with my name struck through and the words, "Nothing ends unpaid," underneath it, I did something stupid. I called the only number written in the back of the notebook. A landline with no area code, just 7 digits. No name, no explanation. It rang once. Then someone picked up, and all I heard was breathing. I didn't speak. Then the voice came. A man's voice, deep and detached, like someone reading you your rights from memory. "We said 6 years, Gordon. It's been 8. Before I could say anything, the line went dead. And then, not even 30 seconds later, the burner phone vibrated in my coat pocket. New message. Meet him in Dry Hollow. Come alone. Leave your fear. I should have driven the opposite direction. I should have thrown that burner phone off a bridge and pretended this entire nightmare was some fever dream brought on by a collapsing marriage. But I couldn't. Not because of Clarabelle. Not even because of the debt. It was because of the photo. The Polaroid. The one taped to the mailbox. The one someone had taken from inside a storage lot, of me holding the burner phone. It wasn't just a photo. It had been taken through my father's old camera lens, a custom fisheye Nikon that had a crack in the upper left corner. That flaw showed clearly in the image, a haloed blur like a scar in the sky. And I had buried that camera in my father's casket, which meant someone had dug it up. I didn't even stop to pack. I filled the tank, grabbed the ledger, the burner phone, and drove 3 hours north into the cold backwoods near the Canadian border. Dry Hollow wasn't on any official map. It was more of a rumor with a zip code. A ghost town turned sanctuary for men who needed to be forgotten. People like my father. People like the man Clarabelle had been meeting. People who didn't ask for second chances, because they already knew they'd never get one. I arrived just before sunset. The roads were narrowing, pine trees rising like watchtowers. The place felt like a bruise in the landscape. I passed a faded wooden sign with no lights. Dry Hollow. Population, don't ask. There were no children, no gas stations, just scattered trailers, rusted pickups, and men with faces that looked like they'd been carved from something sharp and quiet. I parked outside the only building that had electricity, a bar with no name, just a humming neon, open sign flickering behind barred windows. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and stories no one was telling. And in the back corner, sitting alone at a booth with his hands folded like a priest waiting for confession, was him, the man from the hotel, the funeral, the video. He didn't look up when I approached, just gestured to the seat across from him. I sat. He tapped the table twice, and without a word, the bartender brought over a glass of water and a sealed envelope. The man slid the envelope toward me. "Your father owed. Now you owe. Same name. Same legacy." I didn't touch the envelope. I kept my hands under the table, clenched so tightly my nails dug crescents into my palms. "This isn't about the money anymore," I said. He smiled just barely. "No, it's about the memory." That word made me flinch, because he was right. I couldn't remember the exact amount. Couldn't even remember the name of the man who gave it to me. Just that I'd been desperate, Clarabelle's business was dying, and I'd been told, very clearly, that if I failed to repay, an alternative arrangement will be activated. The man leaned forward. "She volunteered, you know. Clarabelle. It wasn't forced. She knew what would happen, but she figured if she played her part well enough, she might get to walk away with more than just her name." I stared at him, heart pounding. "Played what part?" He shrugged. "The wife. The betrayal. The burn." My voice was barely a whisper. "So none of it was real?" "Oh, the cheating was real," he said, finally smiling fully. "But the love? That expired years ago." He stood and left without another word. I opened the envelope. Inside was a photo of Clarabelle and a wedding license. Not mine. Not with me. Dated 4 months ago. I don't remember driving home. I barely remember leaving Dry Hollow at all. The next few hours, maybe even a full day, was a blur of asphalt and trees, road signs I didn't read, gas stations I didn't stop at. My mind wasn't in the driver's seat anymore. It was somewhere darker, deeper, spinning like a drain in a bathtub, trying to understand what the hell I was even inside of anymore. Clarabelle. Married. 4 months ago. I ran the dates through my head over and over, trying to find the crack, the inconsistency, The one thing that might have made it all some forgivable misunderstanding. But it was perfect. Too perfect. The date on the wedding license was exactly 3 days before our anniversary. And that night, our anniversary night, she had told me she was sick and needed to stay with her sister, which I had believed without hesitation because I was the kind of husband who always gave her the benefit of the doubt. And now I realized she didn't have the flu. She had a new husband. I stared at the wedding license for hours. Different county, different name. The man listed was someone I'd never heard of, Felix Granger. Age 45. Occupation, private contractor. No address. I searched him online. Nothing. No photos. No social media. No LinkedIn. The only result was an old zoning dispute tied to a hunting property in rural Maine. Beyond that, he was a ghost. A placeholder. A smokescreen. The same ghost I saw at the funeral. Because that's when it hit me. Felix Granger was the man in the blue suit. The man she hugged too long. The man who walked out of room 409 with a look of pity. He wasn't her affair. He was her other husband. And I was just the buffer. The original model. The draft before the rewrite. But why? Why keep me around? And then I remembered what he said at the bar in Dry Hollow, just before he left me sitting there with that envelope burning in my hand. The cheating was real. But the love? That expired years ago. No, it didn't expire. It was replaced. I tried calling her. Not to scream or accuse, but just to hear what lie she would use. What version of herself she'd offer me now. The call didn't go through. Disconnected. Like she had never existed at all. I checked our mortgage account. Her name was no longer listed. I checked our shared Spotify, gone. Our grocery rewards app, deleted. I even checked our Nest security account. No devices found. She had erased herself from my life like a data wipe. And it wasn't just her. It was everyone. Her family, her friends, the coworkers she always talked about, even her yoga instructor who used to send holiday cards. All of them vanished. Their numbers no longer worked. Their emails bounced. Her entire ecosystem had disappeared, like it had only ever been rented in her name. I wasn't paranoid anymore. I had been played. I dug deeper. That night, I drove to the registrar's office in the county listed on the wedding license and asked for records of the ceremony. The clerk looked at me like I was speaking Latin, said there was no marriage filed under that name. Not Clarabelle's, not Felix's. I showed her the physical copy. She scanned it and narrowed her eyes. This isn't fake, she said. But it was sealed. Sealed, meaning someone high up filed a privacy block. Usually law enforcement, military contractors, intelligence affiliates. Once it's sealed, it's above my pay grade. That's when I stopped asking questions. Because I realized I wasn't dealing with an affair, or a scam, or even a con. I was dealing with something coordinated. Something that had protocols. Something that required a fall guy, a patsy, a quiet man with no backbone who'd never make a scene. A man like me. Back home, I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor in the hallway surrounded by boxes of everything she left behind. Her old paint supplies, birthday cards from my mother, souvenirs from places we never actually went together. A life curated for me to believe in. And then I heard it. The knock at the door. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just 3 precise taps, followed by a silence that stretched so long I thought I imagined it. I looked through the peephole. No one was there. But on the doormat lay another envelope. This one was smaller, cream-colored, embossed with gold foil on the edges. Inside was a card. Handwritten. No signature. Congratulations on surviving step 1. You've been selected for extraction. Pack light. Instructions follow. There was no threat. No demand. No explanation. Just quiet confidence. Like they knew I'd follow. Like they'd already calculated my every next move. And the worst part? They were right. The instructions arrived at 3:14 a.m., delivered through the burner phone I thought had gone dead. Just one message, a GPS coordinate, and a time. No sender, no explanation, no option to decline. It wasn't phrased like a request. It was a statement. You've been selected. I should have been terrified, but I wasn't. Somewhere between the hotel room, the box labeled with my name, and the second marriage license, I'd crossed the line where fear turns into detachment. I had nothing left they could take. My marriage was a myth. My identity, a ghost. My past, a weapon I'd never even known I was carrying. But I still wanted the truth. That was the only thing they couldn't delete. So I followed. The location was an old lakefront cabin 3 hours north, buried in a forest so dense I had to park a half-mile out and hike the rest. It was quiet. No birds. No wind. Just trees, creaking like old men in wooden pews. The cabin looked abandoned, but when I stepped inside, it was lit, softly, candles on tables, a kettle steaming on the stove. And sitting at the table, wearing my hoodie again like it was nothing, was Clarabelle. No disguise. No emotion. Just stillness. She looked up at me and said, "You weren't supposed to come this far." I didn't answer. I just sat down across from her, hands shaking slightly. "You knew I would," I said. She smiled sadly, then looked out the window at the dark lake. "That's what scared them the most. You weren't supposed to dig. You were supposed to collapse." "Who are they?" She paused, then said, "No one you'll ever have to deal with again." She slid a small USB drive across the table. "That's everything. Names, payments, footage. Not just of you. Of others. Other lives like yours. People like me. We were recruited to play parts. Some did it for money. Others didn't have a choice." I didn't touch the drive. Was any of it real? She blinked, then looked me square in the eyes, maybe for the first time in years. "The apricot jam." The words punched me like a freight train. I hadn't thought about that stupid detail in weeks. The breakfast I made on a cold February morning that she walked away from like it was trash. The memory stung. But now she remembered it. And she meant it. "It was my favorite thing," she said, voice trembling. "I just couldn't afford to feel it." Silence stretched between us like a frozen bridge. "So what happens now?" I asked. Clarabelle leaned back, took a slow breath, and smiled in a way I hadn't seen since the first year of our marriage. "You disappear. On your terms. And you? I'm already gone." She stood, walked to the door, and before stepping outside, she said without turning around, "They won't come for you anymore. You went deeper than they expected. They've moved on." And just like that, she vanished into the trees. I didn't follow. I stayed in the cabin until morning. I watched the sun rise over the lake and thought about everything that had happened, not just in the last few weeks, but over the years. Every dinner I thought was shared. Every kiss that felt a little empty. Every moment I ignored my instincts because I wanted to believe love was simple, permanent, fair. It's not. But it doesn't have to destroy you. 2 years later, I live in a coastal town no one's heard of. I write under a different name. I teach photography at a community center and go fishing in the mornings. I haven't dated. I'm not in therapy. But I am healing. Slowly. Authentically. No more lies. No more pretending. The truth didn't set me free. Choosing to live again did. And sometimes, when the wind is just right, I swear I can smell apricots.